Uh, all right. Andy, are you able to see that screen there?
Yeah, I can see it. It's
Okay. Um, Thank you so much, Andy, for coming and being on this podcast today for Brain Injury Association of York Region. My name is Ali Jafferji, and I'll be the host today. And today we're having a conversation with Andy Cook, and we'll be talking a few things about his experiences and his journey, healing and recovering from multiple concussions and mild traumatic brain injuries. But well, let's begin with just a little bit of a uh, um, background that I extracted for you, Andy. So if I can quickly go over this, I put a nice photo of you up there as well.
I'm so young in that picture. I was like maybe 24 there.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's a great picture. I mean, you look cool with the gun and all. Where was that picture taken, anyways? Is that here in Canada?
No, that was on top of one of the sea can bunkers at the compound in Vesico, Sarajevo in
Oh, okay.
94.
And you're 24
Yeah.
in the photo.
Yeah, 24.
Wow. So, bit of background about yourself, Andy. You 10 years in the Canadian military, is that right? About 10 years in the military. And then in 1994, you were served with the Strathcona Battle Group on Operation Cavalier in Visco, Bosnia. And we talked about this a little bit in the past. This was to bear witness to the genocide of the Bosnian people. I think we've had a little bit of a conversation about this. And then in 2000, you transitioned as a police officer with York Regional Police, and there you've done a whole lot of things: frontline patrol, emergency response, criminal investigations, intelligence, guns and gangs, biker enforcement, witness protection, and then currently you're in the training and education bureau. So I think we lost Andy there. He might just be logging back in. Um, if you can let him back in, Kayla, when he logs back in. But the other thing about Andy, he's a ambassador for wounded warriors in Canada, and he continues to advocate for mental health for veterans, first responders, and their families. So we'll just wait for Andy to log back in. Hopefully, he can log back in quickly. We can get started. But personally, I've known Andy for a long time, probably since the beginning of the pandemic. Um, in the capacity of me being his physical therapist post multiple TBIs, and we did something quite interesting, which was um, Pons therapy, and Pons therapy was something that um, helps with balance and stability, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in the podcast as well. But there, I think Andy's coming back, so we'll just give him a second.
Oh,
There you
hi, Ali.
go.
My VPN kicked me out of my computer, so I just
Oh,
pulled it
no
up on.
problem. I was just doing
So
an interview for you anyways.
I'm up on my phone now, so we're good.
Okay. Are you able to see the slideshow as well?
Yep. Yeah, I can see it.
So Andy, I just did a nice introduction for you while you were gone. So we'll jump right into
I I have to believe it was a good one.
it. You can watch it back on the YouTube. But Andy, tell us about your journey from military service to joining York Regional Police. How did that transition happen?
Well, that's an interesting one. My father was in the British military, and it's not common knowledge, but I was born in Hong Kong when it was still a British colony.
Yeah.
And my father got really sick and they posted him back to the UK. So, we stayed there for a little bit and then on to Northern Ireland in the early 70s. And then we spent some time in Germany. I went to a German school for some time. And then 1984, so I came to live with my dad in Canada. And I went to high school in Brampton. And, most people would ask me, how come you don't talk with an English accent? And, the simple answer is, well, when I first came to Canada, the girls really liked it, but the guys not so much because they're a little jealous of the attention. So, I think I got suspended twice in the first week for fighting, but my dad said, sort it out or you're going back to England. So, I learned very quickly on talk with this Canadian accent. But, if I, when I go back home, it comes back very quickly.
Yeah.
So, I left high school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And, like I always admired my father for his role in the military. And, my grandfather was in the Second World War, and, being British, like is no, I mean, I know the history of my people and it hasn't always been glorious, but, they've fought a lot of conflict. So,
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'll join the Canadian Army. So I joined the reserves in high school when I was 17, and I did that for about 2 years, and then I was like, oh, well, what do I want to do? And so I said, okay, well, I joined the regular military, so I did that. 1989, and I went out to the East Coast, a place called Cornwallis in Nova Scotia in the middle of February. Have you ever going to go to the East Coast in February? I suggest you don't. So it's very, very windy and cold on the Bay of Fundy. So, and from there I went to Gagetown in New Brunswick to battle school, and then on to Germany. I was posted to Lahr, Germany from fall October 1989 until they closed the base in August of 1993. And I was posted to Calgary. I think I landed in Calgary in August of 93. And then in September, we got the warning order to do workup training to go to Bosnia in May of 94. So your training began, selection, and then, when the winter months hit, it's too cold to train in Canada for that type of mission. So we went to California. We were at a Marine base in Pendleton, which is just outside of San Diego. And in May, we deployed to the Balkans. So, it's been a long time since Canadian Forces have been, sent on missions that were not just the routine peacekeeping missions like it was in Cyprus. And so we weren't really sure what we were getting ourselves into, because quite frankly, they plopped us right in the middle of a war zone where there wasn't any peace anyway. So,
Yeah.
and I know you listened to my podcast when I talked about what that was like, in that we were just there to bear witness to genocide,
Right.
which is
Right.
difficult to do when you're just stood there watching, not being able to do anything other than report it, and someone may do something about it later on. So, moving forward, like, when you first arrive in those places and you see the destruction and devastation, that, there's a lot of empathy and feelings associated with watching this happen. And but by the end of it, you're just so tired and exhausted of it that you stop caring. You're like, I just can't wait to go home. I've had enough of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, we did the best we could. The rules of engagement were ridiculous, but we totally disregarded them anyway. So,
Sorry, Andy, I'm just
being
gonna quickly interrupt because I think there was an issue logging in. So we do have a couple of people in attendance now.
okay.
And so if I can just quickly reintroduce you, and
Yes, absolutely.
this, I just wanted to introduce you to the people who are here now. Right now, we're having a conversation with Andy. He's a Canadian military veteran, and he's served abroad. And we're just now talking about his experience in Bosnia as well. And part of his experience in Bosnia was to bear witness to the genocide of the Bosnian people. He's been a police officer since 2000, so about 24, 25 years or so, with the York Regional Police. He's been involved in frontline patrol, emergency responses, criminal investigations, guns, gangs, and bikes, biker enforcement, witness protection, and he's currently in the Training and Education Bureau. And then Andy's a huge advocate with Wounded Warriors Canada and he continues to advocate for the mental health for veterans, first responders, and their families. So we're just in conversation with Andy, and we're literally on our very first question. We're talking about Andy's transfer from military service to joining York Regional District Police. So Andy, let's keep going. Let's talk about how did you end up as a police officer from military service?
Right. So, I mean, to just sort of close that sort of Bosnia sort of experience off, when, you know, there, for lack of better words, like during the 80s and 90s, like we were commonly referred to the decade of darkness because the government of the day was underfunding the military, and we didn't have the proper equipment to do the job while we were there. So most people don't know that there were 25 casualties, 25 Canadians killed in action during that Balkan conflict, not necessarily in the tour that I was on, but during from 1992 to 1995, over that 3-year period, there were 25 Canadians killed. And, you know, when they came home, they landed at 2 o'clock in the morning in Trenton because the government of the day didn't want people to know that Canadians were being killed on a so-called peacekeeping mission. So when I came home, I was really disenfranchised with the military. And in those days, you know, if you were suffering with your mental health or anything of the like, as soon as you mentioned it, they would just kick you out of the military without any support whatsoever. So everybody would just bottle it up and not talk about it. And there was an 11% suicide rate within 6 months of us returning back from that tour. We came back in October of 1994, and I just wanted out of the military. That was so I never really thought about what the transition looked like. So in 1995, early 1995 in January, I applied to Calgary Police, but they weren't really hiring. And I suppose if they were, I'd probably still be living in Calgary, but they weren't. So I applied to Peel Regional Police, and the recruiter had said to me, like, "Didn't you just come off a tour like 8 weeks ago?" I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "You might want to decompress from that and get yourself sorted," and then sort of said, "Reapply." So I went back to Calgary, and my troop warrant said, "Well, you know, we don't want to really lose good soldiers, so why don't you join our mounted troop?" So the Lord
This is
Strathcona,
mounted, you mean, you know, on a horse?
yes, yeah. So the Lord Strathcona's Horse, which is a regiment that I belong to, has a long storied history in Canada. It was founded by out of the personal pocket of Lord Strathcona, Lord Mountbatten himself, to go to the Boer War in 1899. But the first commanding officer was Sir Sam Steele, who was the head of the Northwest Mounted Police at the time. So the Northwest Mounted Police and the regiment are very closely linked. So they maintain this cavalry presence, this horse unit, which did a musical ride, which, by the way, the RCMP has carried on the musical ride aspect because the regiment had to shut it down when they went to the First World War. So it actually, the RCMP it's a Strathcona uniform, actually, the Stetson and everything. So it is what it is. So we maintain a troop of horses, about 16 horses, and we travel around Western Canada doing musical rides, the Grey Cup parades, and things like that, and festivals. So I said, okay, I've never ridden a horse before, so off I went. They threw me on a horse, but I managed to stay on, so they said, "You're in." So I have to tell you, when you talk about equine assisted therapy, I think that is kind of like an early iteration of what that would look like, because had it not been for that horse, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I was drinking a lot, fighting, like just really trying to rationalize what I'd been experiencing for the last 6 months in a foreign country that just had no way to sort of frame it or deal with it. So, you know, what soldiers do, you drink and fight.
Yeah, and equine therapy is something that, you know, I have a couple of questions about that coming up later on as well, just to dive a little bit deeper into it. But I wanted to ask, you know, you had quite a history in the military, and then you've had quite a history in as a police officer as well. And when I had first met you, you told me that you had concussion like symptoms. You've had sustained multiple concussions. Some of them have been through policing, being punched in the head, for example, and some of them have been through your military. I think I remember you saying something along the lines of shooting artillery close to your head. Um, could you give me a little bit more detail about that? Like, what kind of events led you to sustaining concussions and mild traumatic brain injuries? Was there more
So,
than those two?
yeah, so the thing with, I mean, and not that I think it's, they probably didn't know any different then, but even the basic indoctrination and like when you first join the military, they have what's called pugil sticks, and it's a long staff, and then it has some kind of padding, almost like a punching glove on either end. And then they give you a football helmet that didn't fit very well. And the idea is you just beat the crap out of each other. And the majority of it are headshots. So until someone doesn't get up. And then it would just be like a Kara's wheel of just fighting people and hitting each other in the head with these sticks. So over time, like it does have an impact. And when I joined the army and I was in Germany, like I was a armored crewman, so I was on tanks. So German made Leopard tank, um, and my primary role, well, was for the first 5 or 6 years was a gunner. So I sit right beside 105 millimeter uh, barrel with a breech that's right beside my head.
Mm,
So every time you fire that round off, that concussion just blows through the entire inside of the tank. So,
right, right.
and I can tell you, like the blast pressure from that gun going off is, if anyone is outside the vehicle, forward of the gun trunnion, which is where um, the front of the turret meets, it will blow the helmet and your goggles right off your head and blow your eardrums out.
Wow.
So and it raises the dirt off the ground, like it's just violent. So when you fire hundreds of these rounds over years, like on end, like um, it's just that repetition all the time.
Yeah. So
And
that's part of military service. And then did you have sustained other concussions when you were in police?
yeah, something very similar, not from tank rounds, but from explosions. And some of the other things that would fire would be anti-tank weapons, which are shoulder-mounted uh, projectiles, right? So now you have a concussion from a projectile that's literally resting beside your head.
Mm,
Um, and you can feel the shock wave go through your entire body when you fire it. So, and some of the things I've been learning now out of the US is that this repetition of shoulder and close proximity to weapons that are fired will have an impact on your brain. So
yeah.
they're still sort of denying it here in Canada, but in the US, it is predominantly it's predominantly on the front edge of reporting now about concussions and
And
TBI.
is that still common practice, like in the
Yes.
military,
Yep.
to have weapons coming off your shoulders?
Yeah. Yeah. So even if you watch the news, any aircraft, anti-aircraft weapon systems, it's all shoulder fire. It's all fired from your shoulder.
Right.
And even large caliber rifles, like your face is right beside the chamber when it goes off. So 50
Yeah.
caliber sniper rifles or 50 caliber machine guns, like there's still some concussion, and you can feel it. It is like someone like tapping you on your nose or your sinus. You can feel it go through
Yeah.
your sinuses.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of rebound in those weapons, isn't there? And
Right. So,
yeah.
um, and you don't, like when you're a young soldier, like you don't know any different. You just do what you're told. And some of the things when I look back, I'm like, yeah, really, there's no way you could get away with that these days.
Yeah.
Especially what we know now is, but some of the difficulty is that when you go back and you start talking to Veterans Affairs, and you say, well, it's in relation to this, and they're like, well, okay, well, just prove it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And you know, there are some other things that the military has experienced that causes neurological damage, which is not necessarily from impact, but from certain medications. So, which are also irreversible.
Yeah.
So,
So,
um,
I mean, um, what kind of challenges, what kind of symptoms did you experience after being exposed to sort of these shock waves from these weapons? And how did those symptoms and how did these multiple concussions impact your day to day? And then how did it also impact your career?
I mean, back then, like they were like, I mean, back then I didn't, you know, looking back, I can't remember if it impacted my my career at all. Like, I went on the leadership courses, and then you go in the promotional process for increasing, your in rank. And so, I'd been doing that horse thing till about 1990, early 1998. And then that was coming to an end. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to go back to the tank troops. And so I think I left that troop, and I went back to a tank squadron in March, and we went to Suffield, Alberta in March. So I don't know if you've ever been to Alberta in the winter.
No,
Um,
thankfully.
but yeah, so I think that exercise, I think it was -70 with the wind chill. So it was
Wow.
kind of like, yeah, nope, done. And so I put my release in, and I think the 1st of August I left the military.
Yeah.
In 1998, I applied to Peel Regional Police, and I got hired, and I started on the 16th of December of that year.
Wow. So it was a quick transition from military to being a police officer.
It was, and the unfortunate part was I left the military with a whole bunch of unresolved trauma, both physical and mental. So, you know, it was good to have a fresh start. But the thing about trauma is that, it's I don't know if I mean, you're probably familiar with that book that, the Brink, I think, I can't remember his name. The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, your body and your brain definitely keep score. So
Yeah.
the police into moving into policing was an easy transition. It was very similar, a rank structure,
Yeah.
reporting structure sort of thing. It's a lot of it's mechanical. Like, you know, um, I started with Peel. I went to the police college for 13 weeks, which was a breeze. It was like, compared to like joining the military, there were people that were upset about being away from home, and I'm thinking, well, this is great. Like, I don't have to cook my meals. It's better than the food's better than the military. I don't have to do dishes, and I'm sitting in it, and I said it's paid for, so it's a win. So, I'm not a big fan of commuting. So in 2000, I transferred to York Regional Police,
Yeah.
and I wasn't on the road very long, because I would exercise routinely in the gym that's at work, and there was one of the TAC guys used to work out there too. And we would talk, and we got to know each other. And he said, "Oh, you're military." So like, okay, well, we're looking for guys. Why don't you try out? And I was really reluctant at first because I thought it sounded a lot like the military. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to crawl around fields. And
What did he want you to try out for? Like
pardon me?
you said he wanted you to try out. Was that for Peel for to work at Peel? Or
No,
sorry,
that was
York Region?
yeah, that was to try out for the TAC team, for the tactical unit,
Ah, I see. Okay.
at York. So, they were beginning to expand, because, their needs for service were increasing. So I'm like, I was like, do I really want to do this? And I was married at the time. I had, a couple of kids, and I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now. I was struggling with my mental health, and I if I was to look back, it definitely had an impact on my trajectory in policing for sure. And so, I said, oh, I went, okay, I'll try it. So um, I go through the courses, and we're doing the 2 week hostage rescue training. So hostage rescue involves explosive forced entry,
Right.
and they use things called hydrocuts, and it's just basically a frame that has kind of like windshield washer fluid in it, and then a shape charge which blows holes. It'll cut a square into a breeze block wall, concrete wall. And so we were in an old school, it was a narrow hallway, and so you stack up on the hallway, just down the hallway for about 10 feet with a shield. And, so the blast goes, and I just remember waking up, and I opened my eyes, and all I could see is smoke and darkness. And what happened was the explosion, like if you know anything about explosions and refraction. So when it refracts from a wall, it amplifies the blast pressure
Yeah.
or the blast. So it hit us on the third refraction. So it pretty much knocked out the entire team. So of course, we shake it all off. It's like, oh, it's fine, and we finish the training day. And had I have had the forethought to go to see my doctor and say I have these headaches.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't. It's that stoic service culture of I'm just going to suck it up and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if I could go back and do it differently, I would, because even workplace safety insurance boards still deny. Well, we can't say that your concussion was from that event, even though it was documented.
Right.
Because they didn't go to the doctor, and the doctor didn't say you have a concussion, even though a doctor can't diagnose a concussion, only symptoms. So,
Mm. And so
so
headaches was was a big part of that, huh? Like you mentioned.
yeah, yeah. And it wasn't just that. Like about 2 to 3 months later, I was still getting periodic headaches. But one of the other things, as I later learned, were these ocular migraines, and basically is the pressure buildup in the back of my eyeballs that it squeezes the nerve, and it affects my vision. It's kind of like looking through a kaleidoscope, and I can't see straight. So
Right.
we went to do a search warrant, and I said to the team leader, I said, listen, I got to tap out. I can't see. So of
Right.
course he looks at me and goes, what do you mean you can't see? I said, listen, like I don't know what's going on. I said, I have this pressure in my head. My vision's all wonky. I can't see. So, um, I sat that one out. And of course, you'll go and see a bunch of specialists. They can't figure it out. And so it continued, and it kept continuing. So, of course, now I can't do the job. So I left the team, and so I got on the team in 2001. I left the team in 2000, March of 2005, and still not dealing with that. Still dealing with the headaches, other than living on ads,
So you
living
still
on
having those visual issues now, because that visual issues are quite a common symptom post multiple concussions or post TBI. Is that something that still affects you now?
occasionally, once in a while. And the funny thing is, like, I try to figure out if there's something that triggers it. Like I keep a journal of what I'm doing before,
Mm.
like an hour or a half hour of what I'm doing before it hits. And it's like somebody driving a nail through the back of my head, and then but it only lasts for about 20 seconds, and then the vision is kind of it's the same thing, kaleidoscopic, and then it just kind of fades away.
Right.
But then there's no after effect. It's really weird.
Yeah. Now I know.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
and and I think I've seen so many specialists now, and nobody can really seriously give me a straight answer other than it's an ocular migraine.
Mm. Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was, when I had first met you, and this was for pawns, I know you had mentioned headaches to me at that time, but another symptom that you were really struggling with was balance, and you kind of felt off when you were riding your bike. And so I want to sort of segue that into my next question, which is about your experience with pawns. So, for those who don't know what pawns is, It's a portable sort of neuromodulation stimulation device, and which it delivers a stimulation to the tongue while you perform balance and walking exercises. And so, if you can see that image on the left, you've got a bit of a neck piece, and then you've got a bit of a mouth piece. The small part is what goes onto the tongue, and it's used along with physical therapy exercises to help people improve their walking and their balance. Uh, Usually with individuals with mild to moderate brain injury, stroke, or MS, and it's been shown to improve balance in those conditions. I'm not going to go into too much more detail about what PONS is, but you did try this, Andy, and we did this together in the clinic. Here's an image of an individual sort of having the PONS device on them with the mouthpiece on and doing some balance exercises. Why did you participate in PONS therapy? What was the reason there?
Well, I was at that phase in my life where I tried a lot of different things, and I went to St. Mike's Hospital and talked to a neurologist there, and they did he did some testing, and it was about my responses, how left and right side of my brain sort of processes images and reactions to things. And there were some sensory deficits there. And I also suffered from something called anhedonia, which is that loss of joy in things, and or interest in things that you used to do on a regular basis that used to give you joy. And his response was, well, you're doing pretty good, and that's pretty much the best you're going to have or going to get. So um, which I didn't like. So I didn't really accept. I didn't really accept that answer, and I thought, okay, well, you can't help me, so maybe someone else can. So um, I also went to CAMH, to their telemetry department. I think I got that right. Telemetry. And they have a device that it's a bunch of magnets and it's a helmet that they put on your head.
Yeah.
And I guess it's very similar in nature. It just sends electrical pulses through your brain to get it to rewire. But I guess after some of the testing and pre-questionnaire, that there was a high risk of me developing seizures if I was to proceed with it. So I'd rather deal with the seizures than not deal with seizures and just deal with what I have. So I went to a concussion clinic in Aurora. His name is Dr. Chug, I think he was. So he prescribed biofeedback, which also helped me as well. And some of there was some other thing, neurofeedback. So a couple of those things, and then he then referred me to an endocrinologist, a guy named Larry Comer at the Brain Science Institute in Burlington. So he looked after my brain neuroplasticity, so supplements, uh, you know, uh, encourage my endocrine system to work like it should, to optimal levels, testosterone replacement and things like that. So those things helped, but I was still struggling with my balance. So from what I understood was that my inner ear, so with testing, I've seen visual doctors, I've seen audio doctors. So the messages from my ear doesn't get to my brain. So I would always balance myself using vision and muscle feedback. So I would just be exhausted at the end of the day, just balancing myself. So um, my therapist at the time, she got onto PONS, and I'm not quite sure how she got onto it. And she said, well, they're running a pilot project at the University of Toronto, brain science department, and I think you would be a good candidate. So actually, she's the one that referred me.
Yeah.
And kudos to her. Like, she's referred me to a fair amount of things that have definitely helped me in my journey. And then I was accepted. So, and then that's how we meet. We, spent part of 17 weeks together. And And my biggest problem was if I closed my eyes and turned around, I would fall over because I couldn't see, I couldn't balance.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so
so
we ended up doing a lot of training with eyes closed, uh,
yes.
different walking exercises, different balance exercises and stuff. And so, um, did you feel like it overall made a difference for you in terms of your balance? And what was your overall experience with ponds?
Well, it was immensely beneficial. And I still do a lot of the exercises that we did together. Like I still walk on pool noodles and stand on the Bosu ball with my eyes closed. Um, but I also make a habit of walking around the house now without the lights on when it's dark. Just so there's enough ambient light that I can just see a little bit, just to keep myself challenged. I have my own set of fit lights. So I continue to do those exercises even though, I wasn't still part of the program and I'm probably a little neglectful on the eye exercises you gave me, but I still do have them on my phone.
Okay, well,
Um,
they can be helpful as but overall, like the ponds program is quite intense. Like it's 14 weeks of twice a day, almost 3 hours a day of exercise. um
mhm.
you kind of have to have a level of fitness already. And you'd come in sometimes in the morning and you've already been to the gym at 5 a.m. and then you come in to see me at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we do more work. And so it's quite an intense program, and I'm glad that you saw a lot of benefit from that. Is there any recommendations or advice you would give to anybody that wanted to maybe try ponds? From your experience, is there any advice that you might give to somebody that maybe wanted to give it a shot?
I think some people might be, intimidated by their own sort of physical ability to do it. But that really shouldn't stop you from doing it because like you tailored the exercises to my athletic ability, right? So, which, really you did challenge me a fair bit. And um, so, it doesn't necessarily need to be advanced to be able to get advanced outcomes, right? Because outcomes are outcomes. It doesn't matter how you get there. So whether it's a little bit at a time or a lot at a time.
Right.
So, you know, um, was it difficult at first? Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that I've also learned is that your body can adapt very, very quickly. You just have to be consistent and persevere,
Yeah.
and just push through the difficult times because it's easy to quit. I thought about it so many times. But the one thing in life that I've also learned about progress is if you're halfway there, you're already halfway there. So why give up your conquered ground? Because you're going to have to start. If you could try it again, you have to start all the way back at zero again. So you might as well just keep going and just see it out. So
Absolutely. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. I know ponds was more so about balance and stability. Uh, Quickly, I know we're pressed for time, but talk to me about equine therapy. I've got a couple of pictures of you up on the board here. Cool ones. Thank you for sending these over to me. But um, you participated in the equine therapy. What is it, and you know how do you think it benefits those individuals with brain injuries, or a version of equine
well, I mean, those pictures are quite. I actually created a mounting unit in the York Regional Police. They'd never had one before, but because the chief had found out that I knew how to ride, I rode horses, and part of this mounting unit in the military. So he said, "Well, if I give you some money, do you think you could create one?" So I said, "Sure." So he gave me some money, and the rest is history. It still exists. I don't do it anymore, only because I just don't have the time. And as much as I love riding horses and have a special sort of affection for them. But the thing about horses, like they're a 1,500 pound animal, and it's not like your dog or your little dog or, like dogs are like this. They have this blind love for you, and it doesn't matter. You can kick them, beat them. Not that I do those things with dogs, but they will love you. They'll just run after you and whatever. Horses
yeah
aren't like that, right?
yeah
Horses don't care if you pay attention to them. Not they're kind of like that um, solitary animal. I mean, even though they do like to be in packs sometimes, but and they don't really care. So, if you want it to do something, you have to learn how to ask.
Right.
Because if a 1,500-pound animal doesn't want to do it, it's not doing it. So, it's about learning how to communicate. And it's, so when you do the couples equine therapy, it's the horse is used as a barometer, and it's learning how to communicate between you and your spouse, based on how you would ask this horse to do something you want it to do.
Mhm.
So it's one of those, it's like, that's the dichotomy of communicating with an animal that doesn't speak.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so you have to figure out what its currency is. So, you have to temper and a lot of the responses are based on your they pick up on your senses. They're actually have better senses than dogs. Like, they can feel ground tremors. They're very, because they're a prey animal. So it's more about it forcing you to do some self-reflecting on how you can better communicate with something that you have never communicated with before. So therefore, you use the same method with your spouse. So it's not aggressive. It's not accusatory in nature. It's not overt. It's passive. So, and you have to do it with the right mindset and feeling. So, because if you don't, the horse goes, yeah, I'm not doing it. So then you can force it all you want. It's just never going to do it.
yeah.
So that's the gist, really, when you boil it all down. That is the gist of
Yeah.
equine therapy.
I guess I didn't really think of it that way, but what I'm hearing from you is, a lot of it is a lot of equine therapy is communication.
Mhm.
And if you are struggling with mental health and difficulty having the ability to communicate those feelings to your family members or your peers, then this is something that can open that side up for you. Is that something that's accurate?
Yeah. So the thing with the TBI, so some of the symptoms mimic that of post-traumatic stress disorder, stress injury, or an operational stress injury. So that sometimes the therapy can be very similar, and equine therapy is one of them. And there's one thing I know about, having a TBI is that when therapists talk about your window of tolerance, is that when your window of tolerance is closed, that you have zero patience, and everything will set you off and trigger you. So, you know, if you're in that mindset and you're trying to get this 1,500-pound animal to do something, it's never going to work. So
Right.
the idea is, if you want to communicate with this animal, you have to figure out a way internally to open your window of tolerance. So if it's maybe about just taking a minute and doing some breathing exercises, or maybe just even a little bit of mindfulness, right? To reset yourself so you can restart and then go forward. I mean, obviously your window might not be fully open, but at least even if you open it a little bit, when the horse starts to respond to your requests, then your window will open further. So, it's one of those things where you learn to open your window, if that
Right.
makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's such an interesting topic. I feel like we should have a podcast session just talking about equine therapy. And
Right.
perhaps
Yeah.
maybe sometime next year we could bring you back on and just do a session just talking about this, because I think it's really interesting, and I think a lot of our members would really benefit from hearing what you have to say about the mental health aspect of working with an animal like a horse. It may not be something that everybody has access to, but I think what you just shared, these little bits of information about opening your window, like that's an amazing piece of information that I wouldn't have sort of linked to equine therapy, but I am doing that now because thanks to your explanation. So I think that's great. I would love to discuss more about that, but I know Lori's on the call as well. If you have any questions, Lori, about equine therapy, jump in. Um, but if yeah, no, okay. So, sorry, Lori, you're muted just now. Okay. Maybe she'll chat. Maybe she'll type that up into the chat box. But I was gonna ask Andy, like, moving away from pawns and equine therapy, what resources or support services are available through the police for individuals living with brain injuries, or are there any, or is this a gap that needs to be filled?
Sorry, can you reword that for me? Sorry.
What
You,
sort
you,
of
you,
what
you just,
support services are available through police for individuals with brain injuries? Like, is there any programs that the police offers for individuals with brain injuries?
well, the thing about like the policing as a profession in general, like don't necessarily offer anything as an organization. But they subscribe to healthcare providers. So like our current contract is with Sun Life, and realistically Sun Life, like our our psychological benefits are somewhere around $10,000 a year. So, whatever program you want to enroll in, and they do so because Wounded Warriors Canada offers that equine therapy as well as couples therapy, like COPE, and some of the trauma resiliency programs, which are all paid for by donations to Wounded Warriors Canada. Like they will give you the time off to go to those programs. So, we also have a very wealthy association because of some of the investments that they made. That we have an entire wellness unit that's dedicated to member wellness. So whether it's biological or mental or any of those, or spiritual or social, like there are packages available at no cost to the members. But the difficult part in that is like we're still stuck in that stigma of saying, hey, you know what, I need some assistance. So, being in the training realm, because I'm responsible for training all the new hires, like the new recruits, and I'm quite open about my journey and my struggles with mental health and TBIs. And they get the before operational stress program offered by Wayfound, sort of orchestrated by Wounded Warriors Canada to front load it. So moving forward, they know what to expect, and that you will suffer from mental health injury at some point in your career, because it's impossible to not. That
Yeah.
they know that, okay, I know what's happening to me. I know exactly how to self-advocate for myself. And I'm a big proponent on self-advocating, because the organization, the wellness unit, the government, whoever it is not coming to help you unless
Yeah.
you ask. You have to
Right.
ask. And, that's the first step forward, is standing up and advocating and saying, this is what I need. This is what I need from you. And if you can't get it to me, who can I talk to? Who will?
Yeah.
And that's always been my journey all along, is if you can't help me, then I will find somebody that will. So do you know anybody else? So that's kind of how, I got to you at some point, is just not taking no, or I don't know for an answer. Is you just have to keep pushing forward and self-advocating.
Yeah. So what I'm understanding is that the support systems are available to members, but not necessarily programs available to the general population. Um,
No.
are there any programs in place for officers? You said you're in education. Are there any training programs available to help support individuals with brain injuries? Are officers trained on things like that?
So all the officers that come through, I think it's somewhere around the 8 month mark when after they're hired, is we do crisis intervention training.
Yeah.
So crisis intervention is dealing with people who are in crisis. So it doesn't matter what type of crisis they're in, whether it's mental health, whether it be from just, post-traumatic stress or TBI, or whether they're autistic, or whatever that may be, is that the training revolves around trauma-informed approaches, in that everyone that we have an interaction with, you have to assume at some point they have some unresolved trauma or some type of trauma that is causing that behavior that you're seeing. So therefore, you have to, like, we go through, there's a whole 90-minute session on, what trauma-informed approach looks like, how do we de-escalate this using these tools.
Yeah.
And then the following day, then we run them through a series of scenarios where they have to deal with those types of people. So we have role players that sort of exhibit those behaviors, and they have to figure it out, because we put them in civilian clothing, and it's basically learning how to talk to them and get to a resolution,
Right.
because they don't have any tools to take out and use, so they have to use their brain and have to use their language
Yeah.
to sort of come to a collaborative resolution.
Okay. Now I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I'm just looking through the last two questions that I have. But this question here, if a person that has a brain injury is dealing with
Can't get to you.
sorry?
Oh, I'm just trying to reach out, but I can't get to the chat and I'm having trouble here. And so I'm going to interrupt you, Ali,
Great.
if I can,
Yeah, absolutely.
because otherwise it's going to end, and I can't find the chat on my phone, and I'm getting stressed out trying to reach out to you. So can I just say a couple things?
Yeah, absolutely, Lori. Go ahead.
Because yeah, so and Andy, so now I'm getting very emotional, but thank you for your service, for all you do, for, oh my God, like, I don't even know, just in listening to you and your story, I don't even know how to express our gratitude, even that you're here in this moment, sharing all this stuff with us. So from and there are other members who tried to get in today, but they're not able. So while attendance seems small, it's not. And it's great that it's being recorded, because I know that they will want to hear your story. I feel like hugging you. I don't know what to do or to say for all that you've experienced in your life. My God. So that's just the blurb that I have to say, because we're running out of time. There's so much more to say. I too was introduced to Ponds, but it was around, I don't know when you did your
For your
trial. Yeah, but it was 2018, and my medical team, it was too new for them. They didn't know what to do with it, so it never turned into anything. So it's great to hear that you have had some great results from it. But at any rate, I just wanted to thank you, and I'm just in awe of, like, a lot of us can't even relate to all that you are experiencing and have experienced. So I hope that our We organization, just know that I don't know, I want to speak and I'm speechless. So if that's means anything, and I hope that you are, on have some wellness somewhere. I couldn't get in the beginning, so I'm not sure where you're at now, but in the beginning of the program, but I hope that you have found some wellness and some support, like we get at BIAR, for all that you need.
And Andy, I was just going to say, Lori is one of our board members at Brain Injury Association of York Region. And so we would love to continue working with you, and have you on, and, for you to be a part of our program, because I think that there's so much information that you can share with us. Unfortunately, we only had the hour of time. I'll leave
I did a thing with McMaster University too, and they said the same thing. So, the funny thing is, Ali, is I got to retire next year. So that'll put me at 38 years of uniform service. So, and that's just being in the service of either my country or my community. So I think I've done my part for society. So it's time for me to move on and do other things. So, if I can help in any way with helping you guys, I'd be more than happy to. And, anytime you want me to come back on, I'll make myself available.
Yeah, and I think there's so many topics here that we sort of briefly went over, like equine therapy or PONS therapy and mental health. And I think, you have so much to share with regards to those topics, and would love to just sit down and do a whole session on just, one of those topics individually. But just last word here for you, Andy. If there's any individuals, that are listening to these messages, and they do have or struggle with brain injury, what message of hope or gratitude or guidance would you share based on your journey with multiple concussions and TBI?
Well, the thing is that there's always hope at the end of the time. There's always hope, right? So, and there is an answer. You just have to be, tenacious enough to go and find it. I have lots of things in place in my life now that give me joy. I cycle a lot. I'm still playing soccer. I still play soccer, right? So had I not done the ponds and all those other things to go along with it, there's no way I could do those things. And when people find out that I cycle and then they're like, you can do that? I said, well, yes, because your body will adapt. You just have to force it to do it. So, my advice is just be, show some perseverance, right? And it's just, when the going gets tough, like, yeah, it's tough, but it's temporary. So, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and even the discomfort at some point will end. So, you just have to see it through. And sometimes in the beginning, it's like you're playing the long game, right? You're not going to win an 18, hole golf course on the first hole. So it's all about, getting to the 18th hole, because at some point you will get there. And so, when people first try things, they're like, it's not working for me, but they haven't really given it a fair shake. So it's just see things to the end and always be willing to try something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Lori? I love that reaction from Lori. Thank you so much, Andy. We really appreciate your time. I know you're working today and you took time to come and speak with us. We appreciate your time. I hope to have you back on sometime in the near future. Would love to keep having this conversation with you. I think your message, we can spread that through our YouTube channel and our social media. And just like to dive deeper into some of the topics that we covered today. But thank you so much, not only for today and the time that you spent with us, but for your 38 years of service to our country and our community. And, it's people like you that keep us safe. So we appreciate what you do for us. And, just thank you so much, Andy. We appreciate that. And we'll be in touch, you and I. Hopefully we can have a lot more of these in the future as well. So, and happy retirement next year.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Looking forward to it.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All
right.
That's it. Thank you so much, Andy. We'll speak to you soon and we'll chat again soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye.